If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Nepal has reversed its ban on major social media platforms after violent protests left 19 people dead and over 400 injured. The ban, which targeted 26 sites, including Facebook, YouTube, and X, for failing to register under new regulations, sparked outrage among young demonstrators who saw it as censorship. Clashes in Kathmandu escalated when protesters breached barriers near Parliament, prompting police to use live fire, tear gas, and water cannons. India expressed condolences and urged restraint. Despite lifting the ban, demonstrations continue, with protesters citing unemployment and corruption as core grievances. Russian President Vladimir Putin awarded General Valery Gerasimov, Chief of the General Staff, the prestigious Order of Courage for bravery and selflessness in military duty. Gerasimov has led the General Staff since 2012 and currently commands Russia's joint group of forces in Ukraine. In August, he said Russia held a strategic initiative, forcing Kyiv to redeploy elite units across the front. He pledged to maintain a non-stop offensive into autumn. Already titled Hero of Russia, Gerasimov has also received high honors, including multiple orders of St. George and for merit to the fatherland. Former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmitry Kuleba claimed he ran away from Ukraine hours before President Zelensky issued a decree restricting former diplomats from foreign travel. Now in Poland, Kuleba told Corriere della Sera the measure targeted him and around 20 others, accusing Kyiv of silencing dissent abroad. He argued ex-diplomats are not subject to military service and often defend Ukraine overseas. His press service later clarified he was on a planned trip to South Korea and would return September 20th. Kuleba was dismissed last year amid Zelensky's cabinet reshuffle. Organizers of the Global Samud Flotilla said a drone struck the Portuguese-flagged family boat in Tunisian waters, while Greta Thunberg's aid flotilla paused in Sidi Bel Said, igniting fires on the main and lower decks. All aboard were safe. Videos show a flash and ensuing blaze. Tunisia's authorities said there was no drone, suggesting an internal explosion. BBC Verify authenticated strike videos, and an intelligence analyst said the impact angle suggests an object was dropped, potentially via drone, casting doubt on Tunisia's account. The flotilla, which sailed from Barcelona toward Gaza, vowed to continue. Israel is prepared to intercept and detain activists, reports said. The African Union has joined the Caribbean Community, or CARICOM, in demanding reparations from former colonial powers for slavery and exploitation. At a summit in Ethiopia, the AU said Africa and the Caribbean must speak with one voice for recognition of historic crimes and reparatory justice. UN envoy Onaga Anyanga emphasized compounded injustices from slavery, colonialism, and systemic underinvestment. CARICOM previously claimed over $100 trillion is owed, including $24 trillion from the UK and $26.8 trillion from the US. Britain and America have rejected reparations despite historic efforts to abolish the slave trade. The Bureau of Labor Statistics revised job growth down by 911,000 for the year ending March of 2025, showing weaker employment than initially reported. The preliminary benchmark revision slashed growth estimates by 37%, continuing a trend of large downward corrections. Officials cite declining survey responses and outdated methods for inaccuracies.
Let's see what the problems are, and then we can fix it. But let's stop lying and fear-mongering and just manipulating the data to the American people. We are doing that with the one big beautiful bill, or what I call it now, the working families tax cuts. We are doing that. We are trying to jumpstart the economy, to bring manufacturing jobs back. But it is imperative that we have accurate data.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
And back again. Enjoyed that conversation, by the way, with both guests in the last hour on the Country Telegraph, which is our looking at farmers and growers and stuff around the globe, but mostly within the UK, Australia and New Zealand. And it just shows you that we are in a precarious position. My guest is Hedley Rees, a very good friend of The World Today. Hedley, before we get into your brand new book, I just want to ask you your thoughts that the government is now looking at closing farms and plonking in nature reserves and paying the farmers to basically shut shop. Your government is just insane, isn't it? I mean, the Welsh government, but the UK government is just insane.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the usual nonsense, Mike. You know, the UK is a globalist government, and it's playing to an audience high above my pay grade and our pay grade, and it goes across every aspect of government. You know, surveillance and all the digital IDs. And we looked at Tony Blair as basically the architect of a lot of this, and I'm not surprised by any of it, unfortunately. And the topic we're going to talk about here today is equally,
Mm.
um, uh, concerning, really.
Yeah, your new book, which is called Supply Chain Management of the Drug Industry, Delivering Patient Value for Pharmaceuticals and Biologics, second, and so forth. It's an important book. I have to say that sometimes I've become a bit, you would say in the UK, a bit daft when it comes to this stuff because it's more than 1+1. But it's a very important book and it does address many, many issues. Could you go through just the flow of the book and where it will take the reader?
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Well, that actually is the first book that I wrote in 2011, and it's very important that you bring that up because in 2011, with that book, a 450-page book, in the last chapter, I coined a term for the disease that afflicted the industry called serendipity-induced chronic disconnectedness with change inertia, and the acronym for that is SICI, SI. The pharmaceutical industry was sick in 2011 because it had outsourced all its physical assets and was relying on patents or patents to bring in its products. Of course, that sold in 35 countries, but in very small numbers. But with COVID going on, the editor who commissioned that book approached me 2 years ago and said, look, there's a lot of questions being asked about the COVID supply chain. Would you like to write the second book? And so this second book is called Transforming the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain. And basically, I've gone through 4 decades of a race to the bottom in the pharmaceutical industry. Systems thinkers will know about the race to the bottom. It's where the system, basically, the reward systems in the system take it to levels that have never been heard before. And politics is full of races to the bottom. And it began in mid 1985 with a battle between two anti-ulcer drugs. The first one was called Tagamet, marketed by a company called SmithKline and French. That took 12 years to develop, and it was very successful, and it became a blockbuster. But 5 years later, Glaxo launched a similar product. They basically copied the process, and they made it a slightly cleaner process, and that allowed them to go to doctors and detail them and say, look, our product is better because it hasn't got the same side effect profile. Now, there wasn't too much difference between the side effects, but Glaxo almost invented the art of sales and marketing in the pharmaceutical industry. And within 4 years, Zantac, the Glaxo product, was outselling Tagamet by 3 to 1. And the whole industry thought, by golly, that's fabulous. If you've got a patent and sales and marketing, you can make blockbuster revenue. So they both became blockbusters. And that was the beginning of the blockbuster industry. And they outsourced all the engine room of drug development, if you like, which is um, safety, non-clinical safety, clinical safety, the supply chain, what they call chemistry, manufacturing controls, research. They outsourced it all to contractors. And of course, those contractors became pretty powerful as they consolidated. And suddenly, the big pharma companies weren't able to bring drugs to market anymore because, they'd outsourced their capability. So they started to merge. And there was some mega mergers between Glaxo and SmithKline Beecham, Glaxo Wellcome, and unfortunately, it didn't solve the issue that they didn't have a supply chain to develop drugs. It was all done by contractors. So then they started to focus on rare diseases and health economics and outcomes research, which are arguments which would get people to buy the drugs. But that actually meant they had to charge. Well, the latest drug is $3.2 million for one treatment. And that's the issue. To be able to make the blockbuster products, they've got to sell these drugs for rare diseases, which are biologics. And the supply chain is dangerous because of all the temperature constraints. The biologics are made from living things. So they don't like cold, they don't like heat, they like to be in their own temperature range, and maintaining those temperature ranges through the supply chain is very, very difficult. And these small companies developing these drugs now, they're tiny companies with no real critical mass to be able to develop products. They are the ones pushing these rare diseases. And it's become a bit of a nonsense now because who is going to pay $3 million for one drug, much as you'd like people with rare diseases to have this treatment, but there are people all over the world with diseases like sepsis, Alzheimer's, we've got antimicrobial resistance going on, and that is not a focus at all. So I don't know if that helps. So in the book, I outline all that. I outline the fact that there was a big issue, and it's very clear to understand. But then it goes through what I would call the drier stuff, which is the strategic supply chain management, how the supply chain could be managed. There's 11 expert witnesses in the book who helped me get the points over. And in the last section, I outline a totally new clinician-focused model to develop drugs, where we bring doctors and clinicians back into drug development, and we actually move some of the development activities into hospitals by building prototype drugs in the hospital, because doctors are the only ones who know if a drug is working or not. And at the moment, we've got scientists with, glasses, high foreheads, saying they've invented a new drug, and by golly, it goes nowhere because they've got no medical experience. So I hope that helps.
It does. I'm just thinking your book, Transforming the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain, it says here you have expert witness accounts, anecdotes, case studies and examples of pharmaceutical supply chain difficulties and solutions. Can you give us some of those?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, we've got to start to reintegrate the supply chain. We've got the big pharma companies who don't have the ability to develop drugs. And we've got the contract development and manufacturing organizations and the contract research organizations who have the capability, but they aren't selling the drugs. So those contract manufacturers, really, they're not on the hook for anything. If anything goes wrong with that drug in the supply chain, it's down to the big pharma company that actually sponsors the clinical trial or the commercial sale of the product. So in the book, the foreword is written by a fabulous gentleman called Professor Andrew Cox, who is a legend in the world of procurement and supply. He set up the first MBA in strategic procurement at Birmingham University in the 1990s. And by golly, he doesn't mince his words. And basically, Andrew coined a term called unforeseen moral hazard, where when you outsource your work, the actual companies you've outsourced to, you've indemnified them because they aren't on the hook for the risk that they take. And they adopt more risk-taking behaviors. And before you know it, we've got a lot of risk in the supply chain, which, we know now with these latest injections, we've had it. But also, In the final chapter, I've suggested ways in which we can return to the old way, which is to change patent law, so that you don't get a patent for a molecular compound, which you have no idea if you can make it or not. You only get a patent when you have devised a process and validated the process that will produce that compound at scale, at the marketing scale, and then you will get a patent, which means then the likelihood of that getting to market is 1,000 times more than where we are today. And FDA have a role to play in that. They've been trying to bring big pharma, back into the fold in the last year since Donald Trump and Robert Kennedy Jr. have taken over, and Marty Makary is in charge there now, and they're doing fabulous work. But ultimately, it's for the big pharma companies to develop these drugs themselves using the correct standards. It's for them to bring these products to market in a proper way. You cannot use the police, which they see the FDA as, to make these companies, come to water and drink it. They have to know that if they do their job properly, they will get customers and they will make money. If they don't, they'll go down the pan, which is where they are at the moment. So I've made a lot of recommendations for all the stakeholders, but the first one is to review patent law, and that'll need global consultation between governments. Only politicians can do it, and it needs global collaboration with governments. And I'm very optimistic now that with Donald Trump in the seat, Robert Kennedy Jr. playing a fantastic game, that could happen.
But to change patent laws or patent laws, whichever you want to call it, one country I can just see would be going down a maze of different hallways and finally getting through it, but it would be a very confusing walk through there because we're talking about laws that have been there since almost the start of time. However, if we have, if you extrapolate that to other countries, UK, throughout the Commonwealth, Europe and stuff, you're looking at I can't see that happening. I think it's just too much to ask of mere mortals. It's in the space of our lifetime. How hard would it be to change those laws?
Well, I call this going back to the future, because if we go back to penicillin and even Tagamet, which I mentioned, which launched in 1976, the patents were for the process, not for a molecule. So, and for penicillin, the person who still holds the patent is a guy called Andrew J. Moyer, who worked for the U.S. Department of Agriculture at the time, and that was the forerunner to the US FDA. And he was an expert in the manufacture of molds. And without him, Alexander Fleming would still be scratching his head now if he was still alive, because he wouldn't have known how to manufacture that little bit of penicillin that he found at scalable quantities. So there's evidence. So this doesn't go back to, I know it's a perception, this patent law doesn't go back to the end of time. It goes back to 1985, when suddenly the industry started to patent molecules and no one stopped them. And that is because, the power of big pharma then, as blockbusters came to market. But there is an established process in time, in history, that we can look at and say, well, we just go back to that. And what's so difficult about that? So I've written that all up in the book. I've written up penicillin, I've written up Tagamet, I've identified the patent holders. And so it's not difficult at all. It's just this veil of secrecy that's been over the industry for 50 years probably, it just needs to be lifted. And I will say the FDA are lifting that now, as I say, with Marty Makary, George Tidmarsh, Vinay Prasad, all good, honest people who want to do the right thing for patients. That's a massive change from the days of Peter Marks, when he was waving through all these injections as if they were, as if they were cookies or sweets or whatever you call them.
You mentioned Robert Kennedy Jr. He's under a fair bit of pressure at the moment, isn't he? I mean, there's great moves afoot to remove him, have him fired. That's not going to happen. Not while Donald Trump's there, at least. He had a Senate hearing last week recently, and I thought he handled himself magnificently. So, but we have the blue states now forming this alliance, especially with the CDC, to undermine all that Robert Kennedy is doing. In fact, in Washington State, they have mandated that children, I think, I'm not too sure what age, I think it's from 6 years, that they must get the jab, and they can be given the jab without parental advice at all, permission. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is to be expected, isn't it? They're behind closed doors now trying to work out what they can do. Because if you remember, Robert Kennedy Jr. named names on that. And the one that struck me was Bernie Sanders. He has been bashing Big Pharma for so many years. I mean, I tried to send him emails 20 years ago or 15 years ago saying, Big Pharma is corrupt, I can help you. And it turns out he was taking backhanders from Big Pharma. And that Lady Warren and all the others who Robert Kennedy Jr. called out. So, of course, they're going to try and fight back, but they've got no argument. As long as Trump and Kennedy Jr. stay there doing what they are, I can only see this going one way, which is the people who've been taking the bungs are going to have to shut up and, try and get behind the wheel of change if they don't go to jail. And I don't know. I'm not an expert on that. I'm not a politician. I've got no legal skills. But, I just give my own opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned Senator Warren. I think Donald Trump referred to her as Pocahontas. And that was because she said she had Indian blood in her, red Indian blood in her, or native Indian. She didn't. But they called her Pocahontas. She's just an absolute liar. She can't help telling lies. We call them porkies. She's a killer. What do you, and just off the book for a second, off your book, Transforming Pharmaceutical Supply Chain and others, what's your thoughts? Where do you think, because Kennedy is under a fair bit of pressure at the moment, where do you think this will end up? Do you think he'll withstand the pressure? Do you think the CDC, FDA, and the whole bunch of them will be cleaned out? And what do you expect to come from these? Because people have got to be held accountable. I mean, even someone was talking about Donald Trump, and they were Peter Navarro. He was very angry, and Trump was very angry that Pfizer, when they submitted the information for Operation Warp Speed, they left out bits. The bits were, it'll do damage to the people, kill them. But they just sort of left those bits out. Do you think these people will be held accountable? And there must be a great queue. They'll all be lining up to face Judge Judy in court, maybe.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, Donald Trump listens to people, but with Warp Speed, he was advised by the wrong person, which was Monsif Slaoui, who was a 30-year GSK veteran, a vaccine pusher working in Africa and all over the world. He was also on the board of Lonza, who made the Moderna vaccine. Bad man, and he was the advisor to Donald Trump. And I got a Substack called Inside Pharma, which and I posted that numbers of times. And that guy needs to go to jail. And the whole of GSK is a corrupt organization. I have to say that. They pushed all the merger and acquisition. They've driven this industry to the edge, and the rest of the industry have just gone along with it, sadly. But I think, they found out now, and Robert Kennedy Jr. is a what they call conscious politician. He believes all this. That he knows that all this stuff and you're not going to stop him talking. And I don't think this is going to go back in the books. I think, and you've got Rand Paul on Fauci's case, and on X again, he's going to pull him back into the Senate to be interviewed, as I think I saw this morning. And these are powerful politicians, and once the politicians know and they're in power, I think there's no hiding place really. I hope anyway.
Unless they find a couple of rocks. I once said on a post that a gentleman should crawl under a rock with his other cockroach friends. Let me tell you, I will never ever do that on socials again. I still don't retract that because I didn't call him a cockroach. But anyway, you should tell the tens of thousands of others who disbelieve me. But I didn't. Yeah. But maybe the big pharma should crawl under a rock though with their other cockroach friends, because they're just dreadful people, and so are the politicians, including Senator Warren, Bernie Sanders. I mean, the guy looks. Remember, you ever see that film with Michael J. Fox, Back to the Future? Bernie Sanders looks like an older version of the professor.
Yeah, yeah.
He looks like he's been. Someone's put hold these two bare wires. Now let me turn it on. That's what you look like. Anyway, if somebody wants to get hold of your book, Transforming the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain, it's available at Amazon. Anywhere else? Any other good or bad bookstores?
Well, it will be in Waterstones. It's on the Waterston website, but it's being launched. The hardcover is being launched It's available on Amazon Kindle all over the world now. It's expensive because obviously it's an educational book, but it'll launch in the US as a hardcover towards early October, and that can be ordered off the Wiley website. Then subsequently it'll be on Amazon as a hardcover in the UK. Then it'll be released in other countries. But the big market for this is the US. That for my first book, that was the biggest selling market. And given what's happened now, I think that, so they want to push this in the US first, and then for it to, go out to other countries. The other thing I say, I have written a book called COVID Supply Chain Fact Not Fiction. That's self-published. It's quite cheap, easy to read, and it'll tell you a lot of what you need to know about what happened, the Tagamet, the battle of the anti-ulcer drugs. And it's only about, I don't know, $10 or $15. I don't know, and the Kindle's even less than that. And anyone who thinks that my book's too expensive, the Wiley one, then they could order that and they would know all they need to know.
Absolutely fantastic. And your books aren't expensive. And I can see this one here, Transforming the Pharmaceutical Supply Chain. That'll be in all the libraries and all the universities and schools and stuff. And I think it'll do very, very well. Well, we certainly hope so, because then you can buy me a good scotch.
Tell you what, Mike, you keep mentioning whiskey and scotch. If it was red wine, I'd say, yeah, I'll snatch your hand off. But
no, you drink it. You wouldn't. I'd get the bottle. That's it. Sorry, I'm being quite rude here. Forgive me. Hedley Rees, Managing Director and Lead Consultant at PharmaFlow Limited. There's your lawyer calling you. PharmaFlow Limited. Thank you very much for your time, Hedley, and we'll catch you next week. Thank you, sir. This is The World Today.
We're today's news talk. The World Today.
And back again, my guest is Robin Tilbrook. He's a solicitor, leader and chairman of the English Democrats and chairman of the Workers of England Union. Robin, thanks for joining me.
Mike, for having me.
I just wanted I've had a chat to Hedley about this too, and we brought this up in our new program that we have from 7 till 8 UK time. This is, I just want your thoughts on this, and tell me if your government has completely, because they have lost the plot, but whether they now are certifiably mad. Here's a headline story. English farms could be taken out of food production to boost nature, says Minister. Plans announced by the Environment Secretary mean many upland farmers may be incentivised to stop farming. It would have to be absolutely insane to ask your farmers to stop farming. I mean, surely, I thought there might have been a satirical story, or I thought it might have been from Babylon B or something, but it's a real story. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, like you say, in a sense, they've lost the plot, although I rather think the plot is what they're trying to do. So I think this is linked to some of Mad Ed Miliband's eco initiatives. He's got a system where developers who are going to put in solar paneling on vast sites, in some cases well over 1,000 acres, they can compulsorily purchase the land from the owners, whether they want to sell or not, and they are going to be able to offload their damage to the environment onto providing some facilities elsewhere, such as you're talking about rewilding of parts of other farms. So I mean, it is a wider plot, as you put it, than it seems. It's not just a one-off. It's part of a scheme.
Yeah, even because it's all to do with renewables and saving the planet, heading towards not net zero but net, because they are net zero. The other one is, and it's getting a fair bit of traction online too. They're going to in the Bronte country where they shot, where the Moors inspired Wuthering Heights and all that sort of stuff. Beautiful part of the world, barren but very famous too, and has a lot to do with the UK. A Saudi company is on its way to building and plonking and building 65 towers, windmills there, which would desecrate such a beautiful part of the UK, and that would mean a lot to generations of people who have read Wuthering Heights. And this is how tall they are. They're 100 foot taller than the Blackpool Tower. And they're going to this whole valley is going to have all these windmills built by a Saudi company. It's about time, isn't it? The government said, stop, this is nuts.
Well, the Labour government and Ed Miliband, the Secretary of State who's dealing with the whole net zero project, far from wanting to stop, he's wanting to carry on and do even more. And of course, as I was saying, he's created a setup whereby that developer, Saudi developer, can compulsorily purchase the land, and they can offset the damage to the environment by doing something somewhere else, such as what you were talking about with the hill farms. It's really quite alarming, to say the least. It's going to be very damaging to the ecology of the areas and the scenic beauty of the area. Quite honestly, the current government, far from caring about that, are determined to push ahead with it.
It's just terrible. And you said that they can compulsorily acquire that land. Is that right for that?
Yes. Yep.
That's incredible.
And what's more, they're in the process of trying to fix the price that would have to be paid, which wouldn't be the full economic price.
Oh, that's just terrible. I mean, the upshot of it is, I mean, it's because I suggested to our guest in the last hour that maybe the 12 gauge solution would be good. We weren't talking about rail lines, a 12 gauge shotgun. So here I am now about to suggest, because you're a solicitor, you can look after me. I'm about to suggest that the upshot of 65 towers, they got 3 blades, and that would just about put all of the Labor Party. You put one on each blade and let it rotate around. I'm sure they would see the light and understand that windmills are not good for their health at all. But
well, the other bizarre thing about these windmills is that when the wind blows too strongly, they have to turn them off.
Oh no, you leave them on it. This time, I don't care.
No,
We
but
leave them on.
Yeah.
And then just imagine you leave them on and the rope breaks that they're tied to, and you see them flying past your window. I mean, magnificent sight. Let's be serious, though. I mean, that is serious, by the way, and I think it just sums up the UK just in a couple of words. New faces and new portfolios with the UK government, and one by necessity. Are they competent, these people, or are they going to follow in tradition with the resident nincompoops there at the moment?
They're certainly not competent. Most of them haven't got any experience in the area that they've been appointed to, and as far as we know, have nothing really to offer. I suppose one potential exception, but it's an alarming one, is our new Home Secretary, Miss Mahboob. She's obviously now in charge of dealing not only with the vast number of people coming across illegally in the small boats across the Channel, but there's a project afoot with Labour to define Islamophobia in such a way as to make it basically. The aim is to, in the fairly short run, to make it so it's a criminal offence to criticise Islam in any way. And one of the examples that has been cited in the discussions leading up to this is if you talk about the child rape gangs, and you say that they're Pakistani Muslim, that is going to be treated as being Islamophobic.
Why would that be? Because it's the truth.
Yes, but the whole point of Islamophobia is it's a term that was originally invented by the Muslim Brotherhood to try and delegitimize any talk that was in any way critical of Islam.
I thought the wind farmers were nuts. I mean, you are driving me to drink, and I appreciate that.
Not to Scotch, I hope.
Anything. Petrol, give me some petrol. So, Subhana Mahmood, what's her background? Do you know much about her background?
I don't know very much about her background. I've seen various clips of her talking about Gaza and what she wants to do with turning the Intifada into an international Intifada rather than simply a Palestinian one. And I've also seen her being interviewed saying that Islam is the most important thing in her life. And I've also seen her say that people flying the Cross of St. George are extremists and not nice people.
Oh, you're a very nice person. You are heavily armed with your cap gun behind you, but you have some big balls. Those things you use for cannons, so they could be. You could be in trouble. That is a ridiculous thing to say, truly. And the fact is that she has so much power, and there is no pushback from within, would suggest that she'll get her way.
Oh, I think so. Yes. I mean, in fact, I think probably she was appointed in order to do so. I don't think it was accidental. The government is, of course, under pressure now to do a proper statutory inquiry into the child rape gangs, and so consequently, the government is worried that that's going to reveal that there are quite a lot of senior Labour people who are implicated.
That's the Home Secretary calling you at the moment. She's not happy with you. But I mean, it'd be amazing what they find. But this your government at the moment, and they're there for another 3 years, so they're going to do an enormous amount of damage. And regardless of whether they stay in or stay in power or booted out, which is highly unlikely at this stage because I can't see Celebrity Square's candidate Nigel becoming Prime Minister. I think your country is just about at the point of no return unless they can do something because all these draconian and I mean, if you can't, okay. I'm a Catholic and I tell Catholic jokes, terrible jokes, but I'm sure God is laughing. You can't do the same with Islam. So if we're not allowed to attack Islam, are they going to also initiate the same law for other religions? So that if I tell a joke about Christianity or God, which is a Dave Allen joke rehashed, will I have my head chopped off? Will I go to Belmarsh as a inmate for many years for telling a Catholic joke? Of course not. If I do that though about Islam, then I could very well end up in Belmarsh. I'm not too sure, by the way, how good you are as a solicitor, but I probably would need your help because I'm terrible in small confinements. But it's that way, isn't it? And the UK, if she gets her way and the government gets her way in 2 or 3 years' time, it'll be as much British as Baghdad is.
Yes, well, I think it's a big threat. It comes at the same time as we've got the so-called Online Safety Act, which is something introduced under the Conservatives. And you mentioned reform. Well, they've just welcomed Nadine Dorries, who is a Conservative MP and Boris Johnson loyalist, and she practically wrote the Online Safety Act, which some people are calling the Online Censorship Act. It's and we're getting to a point where we're not going to be able to express any views that are thought to be against what the British political multiculturalist establishment want people to say. And I think it's perhaps worth expanding the point slightly, because one of the interesting things that people have been talking about here over the last couple of weeks, at any rate, and for some people a lot longer than that, is that a lot of the key people within the British political establishment are members of the Fabian Society. And the Fabians are basically communists who are committed to working not through violent revolution, but slow and steady revolution. In other words, the long march through the institutions, as the expression goes, taking the Maoist idea of the long march. And of course, what we're seeing in many areas in the UK at the moment is the working out of or the culmination of Fabian ideas being implemented.
Do you know much of the history of the Fabian organisation? I mean, it's been up in the news, little murmurings for the last two or 3 weeks. For some reason, a little more than normal.
Yeah, so it was started in the 19th century, and it was always intended to be a communist, not exactly full Marxist, but applying quite a lot of Karl Marx's ideas, and it certainly very much on the far left in terms of its overall agendas. It does want to see the end of the nation state, and obviously open borders is one way of achieving that, and many Fabians have said so. Its original logo, as it were, or emblem, was a wolf in sheep's clothing. And I think that probably tells you what their agenda is. They intend to be the full communist wolf, but they intend to lull us into a full sense of security by looking like a sheep.
Yeah, it's pretty scary. I see that the migrants who are looking forward to, these are the illegal migrants who are looking forward to pretty swisho hotel or accommodation, similar standard. Of course, donations from the government, of course, were always welcome, or handouts. Seems now that the migrants, the illegal immigrants, are allowed to sue the government. It's just as truly it's like watching Monty Python unravel.
It's if it could be worse than what you just said, Mike, it is, because whereas English people who are injured in an accident, or even if they've been deliberately attacked and want to sue, they can't get legal aid. Whereas the migrants suing the government can get legal aid. So not only are they after taxpayers' money for compensation, but they can have taxpayers' money to bring a case to get the compensation.
And that's incredible. I mean, I'm speechless. That is true. I mean, again, though, this is what Starmer is doing, and he's in his party. And if you look at what's happening to people on the land, look what's happening to people in cities. The Brit is being discarded, not important, and what is important, and that just is demonstrated by Shabana Mahmood. Sorry about that. She'll sue me for that one. But I didn't mention Islam in that at all, so maybe I'll get off. But who knows? I may need to borrow your flag. Used to really go down in flames. But you can see the direction they are, and people say, "Oh, the government's going to destroy this, killing this." It is actually killing the UK. I mean, it just, and I have arguments with friends about this, and they say, "No, it's not." So I point out some of the things that are happening, and you can hear the jaw hit the ground. They are destroying the UK, the government, and if they keep going down this path, don't mean to be a bringer of terrible news. There's no coming back, is there?
I think you're right, Mike. I mean, but you've got to bear in mind, as I said, that the Fabians are committed to getting rid of the nation state, and I don't think it's any accident in that context that it was actually Labour that brought in national devolution for Scotland and Wales, and indeed also curiously, you've got Labour politicians talking about Northern Ireland as a nation as well. So we got devolution in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and obviously that is, as John Major said at the time, a direct attack on the concept of the United Kingdom, and that can't really be rowed back from. I think that particularly with Scotland, the Scots would fight rather than allow the UK to reabsorb them. In England, the British establishment have been working on trying to break England up, and so obviously England being the oldest nation state on Earth, founded or first united in 927. That's a particular focus of hostility, and they want to destroy the very idea of England, let alone any institutions that talk about England. And the last Labour government made it so that it was difficult for any new England sporting teams to be created. So that it goes, the anti-English agenda goes quite a long way. And at the moment, you're mentioning my flag. Well, there's been a movement across England and also the United Kingdom generally to fly flags. These are basically in protest at our nation being ignored, but they are also in protest at the housing of illegal immigrants in hotels all over the country, from where crimes are being often committed. And people have got fed up with this happening, particularly when English or British people are not being properly looked after by the state. So the flags have been going up. Well, various Labour local authorities have been busy trying to take these down as quickly as possible, whereas they were perfectly happy to have people flying Palestinian flags and the gay pride flag and other flags of that nature. But they were not, and they're not happy to have crosses of St George put up anywhere. And I was reading the other day that the SNP, who are regard themselves as a left-wing party, that they are fed up with the idea that some people have been putting up the Scottish saltire as opposition to the illegal immigrants. So they're torn as to whether or not they've got to be removing the saltire, which was previously something that they thought was their symbol.
It's just incredible. I mean, I think the flag they would like people to fly is just white. That's what I think. Now, onto
red, I think.
or just anything but the
just red
flags they have at the moment. What's your thoughts on Reform UK? And I see Boris is about to. I can see this happening. He's got the hands getting itchy. I need to be Prime Minister again. And Reform could be, in his mind, maybe his ticket. Even though Nigel, he'll be going, my hands are getting itchy. I need to be Prime Minister. Can you see Johnson because he's mad. I mean, he's just certified to be mad. I'm not too sure about Nigel, but I can see there's going to be a butting of heads between Boris and Nigel. And how long do you think that'll take? And is it a good thing?
So one of the things that Nadine Dorries said shortly after having been welcomed into Reform at their conference very recently was she then went off and gave an interview saying that she thought that Reform ought to welcome Boris into the party. That has immediately been hit back against by one of Reform's leaders, Mohammed Zia Youssef, and he said that Boris wouldn't be welcome, and some other commentators have pointed out that Boris is personally responsible for what's now being called the Boris wave, whereby we've had sort of something in the order of 3 million immigrants come in during the time that Boris was Prime Minister, welcomed by him, after having got elected, saying that we were going to take back control of our borders, and that meant we were going to have a big reduction in the numbers of immigrants coming in. So he says that to get elected, and then immediately afterwards he's making sure that the maximum number of people come in.
Yeah, I think your politics at an all-time low, and I look at politics in Australia, same thing. Look at politics in New Zealand. I mean, you want to look at all-time lows. I mean, there's no one there to be trusted. Australia, our Conservatives, the shadow communications minister, firmly believes that the government needs to totally control the internet. And that's the Conservatives. Can you imagine what Labor are like here? So I think Labor Party around the world, they are just they're decimating the West, and they're winning. And I see zero chance at this stage of stopping the madness. Just quickly, what the English Democrats? What's your thoughts on all this?
Well, we've always been opposed to mass immigration. And we campaigned at the last general election on the ballot paper. We had deport all illegal immigrants, and the fact is, people coming across from France are not fleeing a country that's at war, are they? No. So consequently, they are not refugees in any meaningful sense, and we need to make sure that they are returned either to France or sent off somewhere where they will not be happy to be sent. The Conservatives were talking about Rwanda. I personally think Rwanda was always a difficult one because you'd have to fly everybody there.
Charming place. They would enjoy it. Not is the boat still their mode of transport? Or coming in from other parts of the world into the UK, or are some flying into the UK now? Is it still by boat? How is it?
So basically the ways that people are coming into the country and becoming illegal immigrants are in tens of thousands of cases coming over on small boats, but others come in smuggled in other ways, like on lorries,
Trucks, yep.
um,
Train.
but and sometimes on the train. But probably the most popular method is to actually get here legally, maybe on a tourist visa or as a student, and then overstay.
Do you think the giveaway when they're travelling on the tourist visa is that they have the kitchen sink, the fridge, goats, other cattle with them? Because, I mean, and I see that Donald Trump has acted on this too. He's making it very hard for people. And from some countries, they can't get into the US unless they can really prove that they are only going to be there for a short time. Maybe the UK should do something similar, but it's not going to happen with Starmer, is it?
No, I mean the problem in a sense is not only complete failure of border control, but it's also that the system as it stands at the moment has lots of inducements for people to do this. So once you got to the country, you're entitled to full access to welfare benefits, full access to social housing, full access to the medical system. Some Dutch researchers have been trying to work out how much illegal immigrants are costing them, and the answer turns out to be colossal sums. And I think they've worked out that basically, if you have an illegal immigrant come over who's say 25, and they then bring their family over, and you'll then wind up with supporting the whole family for their whole lives, and that will cost over £1 million for every single one.
Incredible.
And as we're getting hundreds of thousands every year now, you can see that that is one part of the British state that's heading towards bankruptcy. There's quite a few other parts as well. Economists are now very seriously talking about whether the British state will go bankrupt in the next few years.
It'll be a knock on the door to Mr. IMF. Can we borrow some money? We need some money. Again, but not alone. Look at France. They're going down that path too.
Yep.
I mean, Macron's got enough problems on his plate right now. I'm probably looking for if I was him, I'd go to an island somewhere, just buy his island and take his husband with him. Robin Tilbrook, very bad boy. Robin Tilbrook, solicitor, leader and chairman of the English Democrats and chairman of the Workers of England Union. How do they get hold of you? How can they find out more about you and to support the English Democrats?
Yes, so the English Democrats website, Mike, is englishdemocrats.party. The Workers of England Union website is workersofengland.co.uk, and I'm on Twitter at Robin Tilbrook.
Fantastic conversation. Shocked about Shabana. Is it Shabana Mahmood? And you're right. I think it's going to be a. I mean, if we're talking about this in say 18 months, I'm sure that the UK has at this stage gone down the gurgler totally. And then what do we have? Do we have that civil war as they're all advocating at this stage? Robin, thank you very much for your time. I'm going to go home for a scotch fairly soon because I'm allowed to. Far too early for you, but you can look forward to 5 o'clock. Robin Tilbrook, solicitor and a great friend of us here. Thank you very much, sir.
You might.
This is The World Today.